Hello everyone. Welcome to your class 7th physics. I hope you all will be fine and have completed your homework. So now let's begin our class.
Students, in our previous video we have discussed about the different forms of energy. Today we are going to discuss about potential energy, which is a form of mechanical energy. So there are two different forms of mechanical energy. First one is potential energy and the other is kinetic energy. So in this video we will discuss only about potential energy. Now what is potential energy? Potential energy of a body is the energy possessed by it due to its state of rest or position. Means the energy that is being possessed by a body, that a body have due to its state of rest or position, that is known as potential energy. It is equal to the work done in bringing the body to that state of rest or position. Means that energy, that potential energy in that body is equal to the work done in bringing the body to that position or the state of rest. Now to understand this definition, we will see one example. Suppose you have taken this ball from the ground by rolling it to a certain height h. Now, if you will leave this ball will come to the ground again by itself. Now, why this ball is able to come down to the ground by itself? Because you have done some work on this ball while taking it from the ground to a certain height and h. And because of that work done on the ball, it has some kind of energy stored in it, and that is energy that is stored in it is known as potential energy. And because of that potential energy, this ball is able to come down by itself to the ground. Okay. So potential energy is what? Potential energy of a body is the energy possessed by it due to its state of rest or position, and it is equal to the work done on the body in bringing the body to that state of rest or position. It is written as PE or U. Means you can write it as PE and also as U. Now some more examples we will see of potential energy. First one is a wound up watch spring has potential energy because of the wound up state of its coil. As the spring unwinds itself, it does work to move the arms of the watch. Means a wound up spring. Wound up means a spring that is being rolled. Okay. So while wounding up, we are doing some work on this coil to wound up, to bring it in the wound up state, and because of that work done on this spring to wound up, that work done is stored in the form of potential energy in this spring, and when it unwinds itself, it will move the arms of the watch because of the potential energy that is stored in this wound up spring. Okay. Now second example is a compressed spring has potential energy stored in it which is equal to the work done on the spring in bringing it to the compressed state. Means suppose this is an uncompressed spring, means the original state of the spring is this, but if we compress this spring, okay, when we compress this spring, what will happen? Means we are doing some work on this spring to compress it. Now as soon as we leave this spring, it will again take the original state. Means it will again comes to this to its original state. Now why it comes to its original state by itself? Because while compressing the spring, we have done some work on this spring. So that work is stored in this spring in the form of potential energy, and that because of that potential energy, it is able to take its original state. Understood? Now third example is a stretched rubber band has potential energy. Means this stretched rubber band has means when we stretch a rubber band from both the ends, it has potential energy because we have stretched it. Now it does work in restoring itself to its original state. And because we have done some work on this rubber band to stretch it, that work is stored in the form of potential energy in this rubber band, and because of that potential energy it is able to restore itself to its original state. In figure 3.8 you can see here a pebble. You can see a pebble here. A pebble is placed on the stretched rubber catapult. You can see here the catapult is thrown away when it is released to restore its original state. Means when you will release this rubber band of this catapult, what will happen? This pebble will move to a certain distance. Okay, then why is this pebble able to cover a certain distance? Because while stretching you have done some work on this rubber band, and that work is stored in the form of potential energy, and that potential, and because of that potential energy this pebble is able to move to a certain distance. Understood? In stretching a rubber band, work is done. This work is stored in the rubber band in the form of potential energy, and that potential energy is able to throw the stone to a certain distance. Now you can see here fourth example, a hammer. At a height h, you can see a hammer, a nail and wood. So when a hammer at a height has potential energy stored in it, means if we are raising a hammer to a certain height, because of that height it has some potential energy stored in it, and the hammer has this energy because of its position at a height. And because we have raised the hammer to a certain height h, and because of that position it has potential energy. When the hammer is dropped on the nail fixed on a piece of wood, you can see a nail here. When this hammer is dropped on a nail that is fixed on a piece of wood, it drives the nail into the wood as shown in this figure number B. Means when we will drop this hammer on this nail, what will happen? That potential energy is because of that potential energy this iron nail will penetrate into the wood. Okay, so means when we have done the work on this hammer while raising it, that work is stored in the hammer in the form of potential energy, and because of that potential energy this nail drives into the wood. Okay, now you can see one more example here in figure 3.10. A falling stone when reaches a pen, you can see here a pen of the pulley attached at the one end of the pulley. This is a pulley, and when a stone reaches one end, the pen which is attached to one end of the pulley, it lifts a weight which is on the other pen, which is on the other side of the pulley. And why this happens? Because of the potential energy of the stone, and when this stone reaches a pen, it is able to move the pen downwards, and because the pen will move downwards, this weight that is attached to the other end of the pulley lifts up. Okay. Sixth point is, water at a height has potential energy stored in it. Falling water from a height can be used to do work such as turning a wheel. Means when water is stored at some height, and if it is allowed to fall from that height, it has some potential energy, and that potential energy is used to run the turbine with the help of which electricity is produced. Means water is stored in a dam at a certain height, and when that water is allowed to fall, it moves the turbine. Because of the potential energy, the turbine moves and electricity is produced. Okay, now similarly, when a stone is lifted from the ground to a height, work is done against force of gravity. Means when we are lifting a stone from to a height from the ground, okay, what will happen? What we are doing? We are doing some work on this stone to while taking it from the ground to a certain height h against the force of gravity. Now all of you know what is force of gravity. It is a force by which earth pulls everything towards itself. So means when we are taking a stone to a height from the ground, means we are doing some work against the force of gravity, while taking it from the ground to a height h. And because of that work that we are taking, because of that work done on the stone, that while taking it from the ground to a particular height, we are doing some work on this stone, and that work is stored in the form of potential energy in that stone. So the factors affecting the potential energy of a body placed at a height. There are some factors on which the potential energy of a body that is placed at a height depends. Now, what are those factors? The first one is the potential energy of a body in a raised position depends upon the following two factors. The first one is mass of the body, and the other is height of the body. Okay, so greater the mass of the body, greater is the potential energy of the body. Higher the height of the body, greater is the potential energy. Means more the mass, more is the potential energy. And more the height of the body, greater the height or higher the height of the body, the more is the potential energy. So we will see one example for this. For this, we are taking the example of hammer and nail that we have already studied in this lesson in one of the examples. So what we have done here, we have taken two cases. In the first case, the height of the hammer is h1, and in the second case, height is h2. In the first case, mass of the hammer is m1, and in the second case, mass of the hammer is m2. We have supposed that these are the heights and mass of this hammer. Now, if in the first case we are dropping the hammer on this nail, what will happen? Only this nail will penetrate only only a small distance in this wood, while in the second case, in which height is h2 and h2 is greater than h1, means this is at a more height from this wood as comparison to this h1. So what will happen? This hammer is able to drive the nail to a more distance as comparison to the nail which we have taken in the first case. Now why it happens? Because the more the height of this hammer, the more is the potential energy stored in this hammer. And in this case, height is less, so the potential energy of this hammer is less as comparison to the potential energy of the hammer in the second case. And the mass of the hammer here is m1, and here the mass is m2, and m1 is also less than m2, means mass of hammer m1 is less than the mass of hammer m2. Now because of the mass also, the lighter the hammer, the less it will drive the nail into the wood. The more the mass of the hammer, the more it will drive the nail into the wood. Means greater the mass of the body, the greater is the potential energy. Higher the height of the body, the greater is the potential energy. So I think you all must have understood about the factors that are affecting the potential energy of a body. Let's see one more time. So what it is? The greater the mass of the body, greater is the potential energy of the body. Higher the height of the body, greater is its potential energy. I hope you all must have understood this. So now what you have to do in homework, you have to read the lesson up to here so that it will be more clear to you. And further explanation we will continue in our next video. Thank you.